I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And this is the promised follow-up. This is...
Happy birthday again to River.
Happy birthday to River.
So this is two of them.
This is two of them. We're going to do...
How the World Fell in Darkness.
Fell Under Darkness,
Yep,
which is an instrumental, and then it goes into the next song. So
Breaking Out.
If you haven't been watching, it's this sci-fi story where there's this good doctor named Dr. Light, bad doctor named Dr. Wiley. Dr. Wiley is in love with Dr. Light's girlfriend. Dr. Light's girlfriend says, I don't want you, I love Dr. Light. He then kills her, or has an android kill her, which Dr. Light built. And then Light gets accused of the crime when he really didn't do it. He escapes, but then he goes to her funeral where he gets caught, but he gets caught on purpose because he wants to die, because he doesn't feel the reason to live anymore because his girl is dead, and he gets found not guilty. But then Wiley, who is the basically overlord now of the city, has basically told everybody, see, justice isn't being served. So the last song we heard was Give Us a Rope, which is where Dr. Light was like basically being exiled and escaping from the city.
Is Wiley Albert?
Albert Wiley, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's the bad guy.
All
so
right.
now this is called, so now we're going to the instrumental, How the World Fell Under Darkness, and it has...
Breaking Out.
And then we're going to go straight into Breaking Out. So if you continue with the story. With that, let's go.
Here we go.
This city doesn't know what's coming. She doesn't feel the heat. This city won't know what hit her, what knocked her out into the streets. This city's thinking that it's over and she's already fast asleep. So I'm breaking out of here tonight. Now I'm ready. We got only what we need, only the chance to survive.
I'm Bruce Springsteen.
And even then, it's a coin toss, so roll the dice. There's gotta be something better, something that feels more alive. So I'm breaking out of here tonight. I'm breaking out of here. You gotta feel it, girl. Feel the wind pick up. It feels like something's gonna change. There's no use putting in a drive if all the wheels are stuck. There's something wrong here. Like this whole city wants to scream, but no one makes a sound. But you gotta feel it, baby. So I'm gonna find out what it is, and I'm gonna tear it down. The engine's running, baby. We don't have time for goodbyes. I know you can't come with me. I see that look in your eyes. So kiss me fast, 'cause there's no time to lose. Leave the light on, I'll come back for you. And everything is settled down. I swear I'm gonna make it right. I'll bring it out of here tonight. 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 I'm so tired of giving up. I'm so tired of giving in. You wake up knowing things should change, not knowing where to begin. This city won't see where she's going, she won't speak of where she's been. So I'm breaking out of here tonight. Break out. Say a prayer for all the children to sleep. Say a prayer for all the fathers who still remember. Say a prayer for all the girls who learn to still live. Say a prayer for all the boys who won't surrender. Sometimes I just wanna drive till the streets run out. I wanna burn until there's nothing left to burn about. The city's waiting for a better day. When I get back, there will be hell to pay. If I'm the only one that's dead, I will not be afraid to pay. I'll bring it out
Bet you anything that's light. Ooh! Bro!
My word! I really like that song!
That is such a freaking good song, bro.
Wow.
Don't turn your back on the city! He had that
Oh my gosh.
Bruce Springsteen,
You're
like
so relatable too!
blue collar energy. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
That line, don't turn your back on the city. You silly, stupid people. You know who the fuck I'm talking about. Fuck all of you. Fuck you. Seriously.
Are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah, we're talking about the same people.
It was very relatable, I thought.
Turning their back on the city, letting these people die out here.
Whew.
But you're right yourself. Fuck all of you. Seriously. If I see you, it's on site.
Well, did you see...
It's literally, it's gonna be on site if I see you. This song has inspired me. You better stay away from your brother.
Look at this. Morning after morning, the men and the women of the city awoke to find a bright new world. Everything was remade, made better, made brighter. The streets were swept. The undesirables, the homeless, the criminal element of the city systematically vanished.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I know. Sometimes, man. Weren't we just talking about this yesterday?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. There's an undercurrent that we're not gonna say.
Ooh.
That we're not gonna say.
There's like three relatable things that wow. Okay, so obviously we all get the story.
That
They
is such a
remade the
good
entire
song.
city.
Yeah.
Nobody feels like they can open their mouths because there's also this creepy story going around of an assassin with a red eye that will get you.
That's
so.
Wiley's android, I'm assuming. The android that killed Emily.
Probably.
But it's a very interesting dynamic that's being created because the older generation kind of knows what it was like before. They had freedom, but they were also working in a capitalist hellscape where they were working to the bones, and mothers were leaving their kids. And we were just talking about this.
Yep.
You know, because we're talking about how, you know, you're so blessed to be able to never have to leave Orion with anybody, and
I mean, he bawled his eyes out when I have to come in here and do a review. You heard it right before.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
We had him in the car last night.
Yeah.
And I went to take him out, and then he saw you, and he was like, "Mama!" Mm-hmm. He was like reaching for you, and I thought I said it out loud. I was like, "Man, what would happen if, you know, you had to drop him off at a babysitter, and then you had to come pick him up, and he's reaching for the babysitter and not for you? You know what I mean?" Which thousands and hundreds of thousands of women in our current culture have to go through because we don't have, you know, a legitimate maternity leave or anything like that.
Yeah.
The girl gets 2 weeks and she's back into the capitalist hellscape, and then so that puts, you know, it creates this automatic, you know, disconnect. And to your point, you're right. I mean, you said, well, they should downsize because we were talking about a specific person, and you know, I was thinking about having her work for me for like 2 seconds because it would have probably tripled her income, and then I was like, no, I can't. It's just I can't deal with any of those people.
Yeah.
I can't even look at them, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, but you're like, well, then they should just downsize, you know. But they got a pretty modest house.
There's always more modest. You have no idea. You think that I like want and need everything, but you're dead wrong about that.
No.
I would.
If it became between that and time with Orion, I know for a fact. I know exactly.
Ramen every night. And
I know exactly what you would do. Yeah. No. I don't think you're like that. Where did you get that from?
I do like being spoiled.
Yeah, I don't really think that you're spoiled materially, though. To be honest with you. I think you're spoiled emotionally, but I don't think you're spoiled materially. You and Sailor keep saying that. I don't think you're spoiled materially at all. I haven't, like, when was the last time you bought a new thing of clothes, for God's sake? You know what I mean? Like, you're not spoiled materially at all. And we've got 6 kids. It's about time for us to get a decent sized house, and you know, I'm not doing what I was before, so there's no reason to be mobile. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, before, I could get reassigned anywhere in the country and then be gone other places for whatever. So
Right.
So, but anyway, but they were talking about this like mothers having to do all that with their kids or whatever is a horrible place to be. It was in the instrumental.
Yeah, it was.
And so you had the older people. So it's very interesting. You had the older people who knew what that was like, and then it says that they were risking their lives to live. Basically, it was a very cool sort of ironic phrase. Guys having to work in the mines and all that. Like in this universe, they're going back to sort of like right after the Industrial Revolution or whatever, and you had the Breaker Boys down there in the mines and such, which is such a massively provocative picture to me of these young kids in these mines just grinding for some fat capitalist bastard. And because the thing that gets me about that whole milieu is just like, you're told if you work hard, yada yada yada, you can achieve the American dream, and it's like that's not true. If there are certain structures in place, it doesn't matter how hard you work, you are not going to advance. Full stop, period, that's it. I was talking to a guy right now, and he's a black dude, and he gets passed up over and over and over again. And the people that are getting promoted, I know for a fact, are not at his level at all. And so he was talking about it today, and then you got these Breaker Boys who, most of them were white, and if we didn't enact some child labor laws and some minimum wage laws, these kids would have had an entire slave class in America.
Yep.
So
Yep.
What's interesting is the reaction to that is this sort of neo-fascist, combination of Wiley's world of, the scientific machine type thing. And so they've given up their freedom basically so that they don't have to live in this capitalist hellscape. But that creates a whole nother hellscape for the new generation, because now they're all basically, it talked about the machine arms gently around the throat of the city. And so that's not going to work either. And I think it's a very interesting dichotomy here and basically oppositional sort of comparison between, on the one hand, this type of life is horrible, where moms are separated from their kids and dudes are working in the heart of the earth to eke out a living, and they're risking their lives so that their families can live. That's a horrible way to live. And then the solution was this fascist state, basically, where there's this one guy that's ruling everybody and people are scared to death and there's something wrong, but nobody can say what's wrong. But hey, at least you're not working in the mines anymore. And so now you've got this new generation, and that's all they know. And the old generation is like, well, shit, man, we're not trying to go back there. This sucks. But so it's just it's very, very fascinating, because again, it keeps telling the story of humanity, especially the last 120, maybe 150 years, where you had Marx and Das Kapital, and Marx is masterfully pointing out all the horrors and the injustices of pure capitalism, that for whatever reason, there's a right-wing propaganda machine that is turned the term Marxism into this horrible, insult of a term, and you don't want to be a Marxist at all, and yada yada yada. And it's like, well, wait a second here. Like, you trying to tell me that all of his criticisms, none of his criticisms of capitalism were real? They were, but then when certain people enacted Marxism, millions of people ended up dead. So it's like we're not figuring it out. Like there's, and I think this is what this is kind of wrestling with too. Like this guy must have read some Marx, because he's talking about people in the mines and things like that. And this record was written in 2009. So it's people generally are not working in the mines to the degree that it would dominate an entire. Well, I mean, you have some of the coal miners and things like that.
Yeah, but this song, it sounds like they set it back to a time before.
Well, it's weird because it is a time before, but they also have technology that we don't have yet, right? So like the androids and things like that we. So that's an alternate universe. But I think he must have been reading some Marx. Like, I'll actually have to talk to this guy. He must have been reading some Marx, because he's talking about, what Marx was talking about. and the struggle of the proletariat. But then the solution is this sort of autocratic guy that goes and imposes his, he creates a dream world, but then there's all this, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
In the Bolshevik communist revolutions and in the Soviet, Confederacy. I mean, people were walking around like you couldn't speak out against the government. You couldn't say whatever. I mean, these secret police would come snatch you. I mean, reading Solzhenitsyn as a kid was horrifying. And I remember telling my mom, I'm like, man, I'd rather be out there on the street. I'm taking my chances on the street. I was in the 10th grade. I got mixed up in some stuff, and my mother's only solution, I mean, she couldn't really do anything with me. You know what I'm saying? So she made me sit in the kitchen, and she got the biggest book she could find, which was the Gulag Archipelago or whatever. I could never pronounce that term. And it was Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and he was just it was the scariest book I've ever read because it actually happened.
She picked a punishment for you. You're right. I mean, by that age, you could have done anything. You didn't even have to sit down and read that book.
No.
But she gave you the book, and it happened to be something that was interesting to you, so you took the punishment.
Yeah. And I was still, I told her, I said, I'd take my chances in the street. Because I was terrified of the streets too, but this idea that this sort of omniscient, omnipotent force could show up, snatch you out of there like you
oh my gosh,
and then condemn you to work and then, for, whatever, and nobody could see you again. Like, it's horrifying. And Marx, I don't know, I'm pretty certain, Marx was okay with violence against the bourgeoisie. I mean, he really was. He was not a non-violent guy. So I don't know how he would have reacted to the Soviet application of his ideology. I'm not sure. A lot of my Marxist friends, he would have been horrified, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah. No, because there was a specific time when he was thinking about violence where he was talking about we have to channel the violence in an accurate way to the right people, and so he was all about violence against the bourgeoisie. So because he reasoned that you're never gonna. When have you ever had a bloodless revolution? Including the Industrial Revolution. That wasn't bloodless either. So, this song is it's crazy to me because it's really wrestling with, and it's kind of set into the future, which would put the whole communist Bolshevik revolution probably maybe 100, maybe 200 years in the past. Which is sort of like history repeating itself, only with a more technologically updated thing. So I love it, and I just love the song, like the ooh, and the somebody should make a play out of this. Like
every single time we listen to one of these songs, I think the same thing. I'm like, I wonder if what do they do when they're at their live shows? Because I don't think that you can just play random. Like
this is very inspiring though.
Oh
because
my gosh.
There's some sort of there's a Broadway element to the music that we make, and it's only because of you. Very limited guitar wise, but you've got this. It's really interesting because there's a Broadway type of thing, and there's also narration vocals that you do, and then there's you know what I mean with our. But we're a little bit more on the metal side. This is more like you can easily put this in Broadway. Easily.
Oh yeah.
Whereas ours, you couldn't.
Yeah.
Ours is like a metal song with some Broadway interludes. Whereas this is more like Broadway with some metal interludes. But oh man, I thoroughly enjoyed this song.
Like I know you went capitalist direction stuff, but for me, everything a lot of times goes like kind of relationship wise.
Yeah.
And this to me was like it encapsulated the way an American Christian woman can feel in the church. Because there's the city and like everything is being made like this beautiful on the outside, but at the same time so when it said like they basically as long as they conformed to what was around them, then they were okay, and they were living in this kind of fear that anything could change at any moment, but at the same time like they wanted to be with their kids and stuff, and I felt a lot of that, obviously in my previous relationship and the environment that I grew up in. And to me, like, obviously when the guy is like, he realizes he's got to get out of this town. He's not staying in that system. You were never in that system, as far as I know. You were always outside of it. But I felt like, I was always surrounded by rape culture. Always. Like, sometimes I sit down and I'm like, holy shit, every single environment that I was in from the time that I was born was rape culture. And all of those places that I went to still hold to those ideologies. It's unbelievable. So you were like outside of that, and you were like the first person that like didn't blame me for other people's lustful attitudes toward me. And that was like a wild moment in my life when you had said something about that. But anyway, so he's saying, so the engine's running, baby. We don't have time to say goodbyes. I know you can see when he said we don't have time to say goodbyes, I thought he was saying that them two together didn't have time to say goodbye to the city because they were leaving together. Mm-hmm. But she doesn't go with him. She stays there. I remember when I was at like this kind of transitional period where, how like the people in the city were whispering like, oh, just stop doing that. And they were like cautiously saying it. And it felt like there were people physically telling me like, don't do anything. You can't get divorced. You got to stay where you're at. You know what I mean? But there was also like it was mostly like a silent whisper that was going on. And it was an attitude that so many people around me had toward the situation. And it didn't matter what was done in my previous relationship. It didn't matter. Like, you just got to eat that and just keep going with it because, you made your vows before God. And so like there was this whole, but it was crazy because what was going on in the relationship was bad, but it looked shiny on the outside because, we had a little home and then family, stuff like that. And then here you have these women that don't want to leave their kids. They don't want the system to change because it's inevitably going to make it so they would leave their kids. And that was, that was a fear of mine too, which was something that I had to swallow. Like, I knew that if I got divorced, you split time and your kid goes there and then comes back to you, which is absolutely heartbreaking to me. But he says, so when he says he's breaking out of here tonight, and he leaned in and stole a kiss from her. I just remember, being at this point where it was like, okay, I could step out of this or I could just keep going in this relationship. And even though it's not healthy, it's
abusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just keep going with it though, because I want to, you know what I mean? But then when I upset the apple cart, all hell did break loose, and lots of people wouldn't even speak to me again, and lots of people did not look at me the same way. Like, I could tell the way they looked at me previously and the way that they looked at me afterward, and there was an absolute and obvious difference in the way that I was being almost like, it was weird because you would have thought that I don't know, became a prostitute or something like that. Like, it was like the way that they interacted with me after that was just very, very bizarre.
After you divorced him?
Yeah, or even prior to that, like, when I was kind of talking about, as even people that knew what was going on, like, it was the weirdest thing. Like, he was in the clear, he was in the good, even though if I told the whole story to our village, it would have the exact opposite reaction. And even if they didn't know who I was, like, right. Let's say they have no clue who I am, they just hear the story. I think that, 99.9% of the village would say, that's insane, like, he's definitely wrong for that. You know what I mean? But in the church, it was flipped, and it shouldn't have been flipped, but it was.
Yeah, I just think that there's a lot of fear in recognizing the full humanity of women in certain organizations. Mm-hmm. And I think that the people who hold power structures can't countenance that because it has implications because you were absolutely abused, but there are so many women in that structure who are abused. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that going on. And so to come, there was one guy who, she was having some sort of physical malady. She was on the ground writhing in pain. He stepped over her, called her a name, went to work, got another apartment, went to live with some other girl, yada yada yada, and I was like, oh, this is a pattern of an abusive guy. You need to be careful. And people were like, yo, this dude Vin, blah 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 blah. And then they got back together, and so they were held up as like this pinnacle of virtue, and then you were held up as this pinnacle of evil, and yada yada yada. So she goes back to the abusive situation. She's miserable as hell, and I feel terrible for her.
Yeah.
But she's miserable as hell, and he hasn't changed. And then and then you got off, and you're experiencing God's blessing and things like that. And I'm a big believer in not spiking the football, so I don't really.
Yeah.
I don't really go and say.
I mean.
To those people, whatever. But my point is that situation with that other woman, she went through more than you did. And she was abused explicitly in multiple different ways, in horrific ways, and she got held up because she got held up as a pinnacle of faithfulness and goodness, and oh look, she forgave him for doing X, Y, and Z, and then she ended up in this kind of terrible situation where she has no choice now, because it's that trade-off, like. Yeah, she gets treated horribly and nothing changes, and she continues to be abused and cheated on or whatever, but then she gets all this, positive feedback, and she gets held up as a pinnacle of virtue and yada yada. So now she's trapped because she knows that those same people will turn on her if she does something for the sake of her own mental well-being. So
they absolutely will.
So I understand, they have to do that with you so that none of the other girls get any sort of funny ideas. And then they had to, elevate her so that everybody knows, okay, this is what you need to do.
Yeah, it's just crazy because, going back to the whole, like I said, I feel like you don't know what I'm talking about, because you don't know the way that people looked at me or the things that were said to me. So-and-so's not going to have you on their Facebook anymore because stuff like that. It's like because I won't stand up to abuse somehow now. Like I don't want your husband because I don't want to be abused by mine. Like, what are you talking about? This is the weirdest thing.
Yeah. No. I remember all that. And what I'm saying is that the people in power have to facilitate that type of attitude so that nobody will look at what you did and say, oh, well, I'm not going to take that either.
I get it. Yeah.
And it's kind of, there's that situation in the Bible. It wasn't Ruth, it was the other one named after Esther. Yeah. Where Vashti wouldn't dance for, there's this guy.
She's supposed to come with her crown or something.
Go dance in front of everybody. And she's like, no, I'm not doing that shit. And so then the dudes got together with the king and said, hey, if we let this go unpunished, then all these women are going to start getting funny ideas. Not to display their bodies at their husband's command. And so not only was she demonized, but then they brought in a whole other group of women to basically on a world stage, on the stage of their world, basically to embarrass her and say, look, your husband, you wouldn't dance for your husband, but now there's like whole droves of women who are trying out to be his whatever. So, but that all happened because the men in power got together and said, look, if we allow this, then the other women are going to think X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So, you were, but this is what happens when you ingest the accolades of people. Like that lady is now trapped in that situation.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's no way in hell she can get out of it. Because she knows they're going to flip on her the minute she goes in whatever. Right. And then God forbid she gets rid of that guy and then is happy with somebody else. Yep. And it'll be really bad. Because then all the other women will start going, well, wait a second, I don't have to be abused either. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah,
So no, I remember all of it. I mean, to me, it was, I expected all of it though.
I didn't expect all of it.
You were,
I thought that if people knew what was going on, that they would be like very like supportive of me and help me.
Yeah, but sweetheart, you're not the only one going through that. So they were going through that. They're going through that too. Right? Like, remember the one that was all close to you? Like, she was going through it with her, the boy she was with.
I know.
So they're all going through it.
Yeah.
Right? The issue is that there is a resentment when somebody gets out and is happy.
Yeah, I just remember hitting this point where it was like, okay, I have to decide whether I'm going to stay inside of this system and have all the pats on my back, or if I'm going to get out of this system and I'm basically going to... That was another thing. My father always taught me, don't burn your bridges. And I knew I was going to friggin' set my world on fire if I didn't stay there. And so, you know, I made a decision to not stay in that situation.
Yeah.
And it was extremely, extremely difficult watching that city burn. It was scary. I felt like I had everything that I ever knew, and anything that, you know, made me feel secure, I had now lost all of it. You remember, I was pretty crazy at that point because I was having such a hard time. Like, then I started wanting to control everything else in my life. It was awful. It was awful.
Well, there's a reason that those institutions, you know, are, and it's something that the church just has got to reconcile. The church in the West has got to reconcile itself with. Whether it's a Catholic church with the moving around the priests who are molesting all these people and then demonizing the people speaking out against it, or it's evangelicalism, especially conservative evangelicalism, with their understanding that women are the property of their husbands to do with this as they see fit, especially in the physical context. And then there's all this pressure on the wife to keep stuff together and maintain things. And obviously, I don't take divorce very lightly. And from a New Testament perspective, there are very specific exceptions for the divorce law, which unfortunately both of our previous spouses did with flying colors. But at the same time, like, there's a reason that those institutions have been able to go as long as they have, and human nature hasn't changed. And, you know, the context we were coming from was even more stringent than what you would see in a first century church. So, for example, like, women couldn't even pray over the offering or anything like that. There was just real fear of feminine power where we were. I mean, it's just a fact. And I remember, like, having to sit down and talk with one of those gatekeepers for like 2 hours, and there was just clear fear, like, well, and the women are gonna take over, and da 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 da. It was all of that stuff, and I was just like, yo, chill, bro. So like, it's to the song, like, that's how it works. It says like a chorus of fear.
I was just going to go into that.
It keeps people afraid, and they try to make an example of you so that the other suburban girls can stay in fear and allow themselves to be abused and dishonored and disrespected, so that they don't get abused and dishonored and disrespected by the community. And you know, now it's kind of interesting because it's like you got pulled out of one community, and it wasn't very long before this community came along.
Yeah, and we weren't intending this community.
And we had no intention for this community, but I think it's been good for you.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, Ian and all of them, you know, have been a very, very, very big and the big homie who, you know, like all these people have been a very good blessing for you, but, you know.
And when it says, so there was a chorus of fear, oh, don't turn your back on the city, oh, don't turn your back on the city, just keeps repeating it over and over.
Yeah.
That, like, there was that... Like I said, it was a silent. Well, they said in here too. They specifically said it was like the city was silent, but it was screaming. Remember that? Can you?
Well, was it in the previous one, or was it this one?
I don't know. Like
this whole city wants to scream, but no one makes a sound. Yeah.
Right. And there's that. You know, and I've brought it up before, but dang, what's the name of that? It's a movie. The Stepford Wives, like, where they all have to be perfect. They take their little pill and they all have to be perfect, and they have to, dinner's on the table, blah blah blah. They always have to look all prim and proper and everything's perfect, and like, that was me. Like, that was my life. I always had, you know, everything the way that it needed to be. Yeah. And like, coming out of that, I had found my identity so much in that it was hard, like, transitioning out of it. But being with you was a lot easier because all the expectations that I had, you weren't putting those expectations there. So even if I met the expectation, it wasn't very satisfying because you weren't like, oh, cool, you...
Well, I look at our relationship more as a partnership. Like, I don't need you to perform for me, you know what I mean? So I was kind of like, oh, that's cool, you know? But I'd much rather, like the partnership and the mutuality
So-
aspect. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying, like, for me, the performance thing was. I remember one time you were mad at me. You're like, you wanted me to give you a list of things that would make for a good wife. And then
Yeah,
I'm
I'm like,
you started listing these things off, and I was like, oh, wait a second, I can
I'm gonna capitalize off that.
put that on the list. But then I thought to myself, like, that's insane. To make something like that, like part of a list of things you had to do to be a good wife, I was like, yo, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
But you were frustrated with me
Oh,
about
I
it.
was so angry.
Because you were like, I don't know if I'm a...
Because the thing is, I grew
Weird.
up. I feel like that it's because we're interracial. Like there was certain expectations that is set in a white household that is, or maybe it's just you. Maybe you're just different than other households because I really don't know.
I think the way that you grew up and the expectations that you had is not the norm.
Yeah, but all my friends were in the same situation.
Yeah,
like
but
they
you
told
didn't.
me.
It's not like you had a diverse group of friends. They were all evangelicals in the
They were
church.
evangelicals.
Yeah,
Yes.
all churchy evangelicals that
Yeah.
went to the
Yeah.
similar types of churches. So that's a subculture.
Yeah.
And that's like when we went to Cali, you were like, oh my God, because
Like
there
the world is bigger than our little town.
I told you were, and like no disrespect to our little town, because our little town is, it's nice, but and I personally like the smallness of it. I've seen a lot of big things all over the world, so.
Yeah.
But it's an age-old thing where there are control mechanisms. But the thing is, the people at the top and the gatekeepers are always going to be the minority. So if you break through their bullshit, all they can do is do little tactics or whatever to scare you or whatever. But the don't turn your back on the city and the thing meant a lot because at the end he was saying it. He was saying at first they were saying it, the trap people were saying it, and then he was saying it. And it was a very interesting dichotomy in our situation because it was like, especially like the last like 4 or 5 months, we were almost exclusively the ones grinding and upholding that segment of the city. Like, it's just facts. Like, we had him here and sleeping over and you were cooking your famous lasagna and, we were doing all types of craziness. You know what I mean? And like, we were carrying the thing. And then, people said whatever they wanted to say, and I'm like, all right, cool, let's get out of the way. And then they did nothing. I think they had like one cookout after that, then they did nothing. And then all these bodies started dropping. Like literally, like all these bodies started dropping. And none of you motherfuckers are down there. You weak motherfuckers.
I remember
So-
I went in, I was so angry because we had a bunch of clothes for people and shoes and all kinds of different things that people could come and get what they needed. And I came in and they were bringing all that stuff to Goodwill instead of having it available to the people. I said, what are you guys doing? And they said, well, we just don't think that this is necessary to have here. I'm like, what are you talking about? That stuff helped so many people. They wanted me to use my SUV to bring it. I'm like, no. No, that stuff was brand new too.
Oh, I know.
The guy, I don't even know how the guy got this, but he had a whole trailer full of brand new clothes.
I know.
He brought all those brand new clothes over.
I know. And then they just...
They didn't like the inconvenience of it.
Yeah, exactly. And because we were there, like they wouldn't have done something like that because they would have known. I'd have been like, I'll take care of it myself, and then would have been all whatever because people wanted my approval or whatever.
Well, it was my thing. Those clothes were my thing. I was
but they would have
the connections and all that.
You made the connections. You did a really good job with it. But yeah, like that's the only thing about it to me that's like, you weak motherfuckers.
But here it is.
Just because we weren't there to uphold you, you folded and let those people die out there. Like literally, you folded and let those people die out there. It's like, yo, to me, like there's one person like I will not talk to. Like period, full stop. And he has no idea why. That's why. It's because you quit on those people and you let those people die out there. Fuck you for that, you weak motherfucker. But, But it was really cool because they were on the inside were saying, don't turn your back on the city. He's leaving the city, but he's leaving the city for the sake of the city.
Well, right.
So that was really good because
Right.
at the end he's saying, no, you don't turn your back on the city, which is really, really interesting.
So wait, one more thing. When he was saying say a prayer, then he's like say a prayer for all the girls who learn to stand up. That fit my narrative, what I was saying.
Yeah.
And then say a prayer for all the boys who won't surrender because you took a lot of heat for helping me. You did.
Yeah.
I know your life has been very complicated and complex, and so that heat wasn't that hot, but a lot of people would have folded underneath that kind of pressure. People were saying so many things.
Yeah.
You're not the type of person that cares about other people's opinions, and it's a good thing.
Well, I mean, people have been saying that shit all my life. People were saying...
Literally, people were saying that he was dangerous and I shouldn't even be around him. But I was in an abusive relationship and he was helping me to be safe in that
I was
situation.
dangerous to that guy the last time I talked to him. I said, if I ever get a text or anything that something happened, I'm going to fucking kill you. That's the last thing I said to him. And he never touched you. So, good for him. He's still alive. So, yeah, but I mean, we're in Maine, so you gotta understand that. And I am dangerous, like, you know that. Like, talk to some of my friends, they'll tell you.
It's not what they were saying.
Well, they had no idea.
Yeah.
If they had an idea, they wouldn't be Googling me. You dummy. You'd never find me on Google.
Oh, no.
I have so many names. No, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I'm not trying to like downplay it. It's just like, especially around that time period, because I wasn't out at that time period. Mm-hmm. Like I was still, whatever. So I hear what you're saying. It's just, but people have been, even when everything was good, people were always talking shit about me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it just comes with the territory.
Yeah.
And part of the reason they talk shit about me is because I don't care. Mm-hmm. So they'd be like, oh, so and so wants to meet you, da da da, and I'd be like, why? For what? Mm-hmm. They're like, well, I'm like, weren't you just talking all that shit? He was like, yeah, but I want to talk and square it down. I was like, man, I don't need to square nothing with you, bro. Mm-hmm. Get out of here. So, like, there was always a problem with those people. You know what I mean? So, yeah. I don't really feel like I didn't pay any social cost because I think you paid all the social cost because you were not socialized the way that I was socialized, and you didn't have a mother that I had. And I do think there's a racial element too, because you especially if you're a black person that grows up in a majority white area, you already have, just by default, a very thick skin, period. Mm-hmm. And so, you learn very quickly, like, whose opinion matters and whose doesn't, and you learn how to create value within yourself outside of other people's, whatever.
We were literally taught to care what other people thought. What do you think those people are going to think of you if you do this? What are people going to think if you do that?
I know.
Look at what you did. You guys embarrassed me. Or it would be positive stuff, too. Yeah. Like, look, all those people thought you guys were such great kids. Wow, that was really great. I was so proud of you. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
You realize that as long as the majority says you're doing good, then your parents are going to be, you know what I mean?
And that's a good way to control people.
Yeah.
And to be controlled. And the people who are controlled by that sort of, mindset don't even know it. Mm-hmm. And they think you're doing something wrong when you get out of it. That's why they were saying, don't turn your back on the city.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the other thing. Like, I don't demonize. That's the thing. Like, I don't demonize people. Like, I'm not upset at those people, even for coming after you, yada, yada. Like, I understand that. The thing that, to me, is inexcusable is after we left, they didn't do shit for those people. You didn't. And before, we were getting in the middle of fights, breaking up fights, yada, yada, yada. And then after, you motherfuckers stood on the sideline and let this guy get buried. You know what I'm talking about. And then multiple people after that getting shot up, stabbed up, and you motherfuckers are nowhere to be found. That's the shit that's unforgivable to me. They said to you, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they're never going to say it to your face, and they're never going to say it around me. So, just keep it on social. You'll be all right. But that's what I told Homeboy last time. That's what I talked to him. I said, just keep it on social. Don't let me see you, though. I'll show you something new. But like the aspect of the city part of it, that's always been hard for me. Every time somebody gets shot, some girl got shot today, and I'm like, that's somebody that would have been in that building. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody got stabbed a couple weeks ago. Like, these are
the other girl was literally at the building. We used to see her.
The one that died. Yeah.
And she was in a situation in which we would have been helping her.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's the thing that's hard for me. That I'll never like.
I know.
I got nothing to say to any of you motherfuckers after that. Fuck all of you. And Pop, if you're watching this, I'm very, very sorry. I still got a lot of mom in me, obviously. What do you give this song?
Oh, a 10.
Shout out to my mom. Yeah, it's a 10. It's a 10. I love this song. This is I'm gonna be vibing this song for a long time.
Oh, absolutely.
It just had that, like I said, it had that Bruce Springsteen kind of like hard-working, blue-collar type hero type of thing that he kind of mastered. I never really understood why my mom was like so in love with Bruce Springsteen, but like I get it. It's like that, you know, he's got that heart, you know, like that. Guy on his little bike, gotta do it by himself. Huh?
Okay, so the next song coming up is going to be Keep Quiet, and that one is actually River's favorite song on the album. So we get to enjoy that with him for his birthday.
That's
so
coming.
Looking forward to that.
7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be there, be square. Vin out.
Sori out.
Gone.
Drive to the streets, run out. I wanna burn until there's nothing left to burn about. The city's waiting for a better day.